Thanks for joining me on episode 484 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Shannon Miles from Belay. I challenge you to discover your calling and find your third option so you can be empowered to live every day to the fullest. One way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
To not draw the line around the fact that they're liberal or conservative, that they're believers of God or not, that they're somebody who looks like I do or has the same exact background that I do. Instead, I've looked for core values that transcend those sort of demographic categories.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in others through stewarding your talent, I talk with you about finding value in diverse views, personalities, and characteristics while still looking for similar core values. And why to do this, you first have to know yourself and your own values well.
You've heard me talk about developing your talent, and one of the best ways to do that is through books. But if you're like most people today, it's hard to find the time to read. And that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can pick one and listen your way to developing your talents via Audible. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast.
One of the things that happens a lot, and it seems to be happening more and more, is we often live in this echo chamber where the only people we talk to, the only people we associate with, the only voices we hear are those that agree with us 100% of the time. You know, if you check out your Facebook feed, you'll notice that over time, people that appear in there begin to have more and more similar views. You have to be very deliberate to cultivate a variety of friends if you want to hear a variety of views. I love the fact that when I look at Facebook, it isn't for me always everyone has exactly the same view. If there's a big issue going on, something that people are talking about, and I scroll up and down my feed, I often see people on opposite sides of the issue that are all friends of mine. And the reason why is because I've actually made a very deliberate effort to find and surround myself not with people that believe exactly the way I believe, but with people with a diverse set of views, a diverse set of personalities, a diverse set of characteristics and demographics, people from different parts of the world, people that grew up different ways than I did, people that sometimes have beliefs that are dramatically different than mine, people whose personalities are not just like mine, but they actually view the world and act in the world in a very different way. And I haven't done a perfect job of this by any stretch of the imagination, but I work really hard to not just look at people and immediately dismiss them from my circle if they don't believe and act exactly like I do. At the same time, when you're doing this, when you begin to look for diversity in your viewpoints, there are certain core values that you want everyone who's around you to have. But these core values aren't the fact that they vote the way you do. They aren't the fact that they're the same sex as you, the same race as you, the same political beliefs, the same religious beliefs. These sorts of things are actually not what I'm talking about when I talk about similar core values. If you remember on Monday's episode, David talked about looking for people that exhibit certain values, and those are people that often are worthy of you seeking out and developing as friends. But the values he talked about were things like honesty, people who are willing to say the uncomfortable thing, but are also willing to say the comforting thing, people who are honest with you. It's looking for people that show acceptance, looking for people that have the same sort of value of valuing diversity, valuing openness, valuing kindness, people who love others as you are loving others. Those are people that have core values similar. People who are giving of their time, giving of their money, giving of their efforts. People who don't look at every situation as what's in it for me, but actually look at it in terms of what can they give back to the wider group? What can they give back to the world? What can they give back to others? And then people who are open-minded, open-hearted, open-armed, people who reach out to others and seek opportunities to build relationships. These are the sorts of core values that I'm talking about. At least for me, these are the things that I look for in friends. Now, maybe you don't have exactly the same sort of core values. Maybe those aren't the list for you. And that's why the first step to really finding friends is to identify what are your non-negotiables, what core values are important to you. And if, for example, one of your core values is that people believe as you believe around a religious topic, or that they believe as you believe around a particular political topic, then that becomes one of your core values. See, even there, I'm not looking down at people that surround themselves with people who believe the same as they do politically or morally or ethically or around a religious topic. See, that if they've done the hard work of actually identifying their own beliefs and really examining what they believe, and they've identified that those core values are so important to them that they're non-negotiables, they're things they're not even willing to entertain the possibility that someone might have a different view and might even have a point behind why they have a different view. Well, then that's fine. Seek those people out. For me, though, I've decided to seek out a wider circle than that, to not draw the line around the fact that they're liberal or conservative, that they're believers of God or not, that they're somebody who looks like I do or has the same exact background that I do. Instead, I've looked for core values that transcend those sort of demographic categories. And I can tell you there's tremendous benefits to doing this, because you begin to open yourself up to a diversity of opportunities. You begin to open yourself up to a diversity of opinions. You begin to become more open-minded and accepting of difference. You begin to look for groups around which you can have unity, but not uniformity. It's no longer about everyone being the same, and rather it's about, despite our differences, not only despite, but because of our differences, we are able to come together and do more than any of us could do by ourselves. There's tremendous strength in diversity. If you have that kind of diversity in a company, it makes the company stronger. If you have that kind of diversity in a church, it makes the church stronger. If you have that kind of diversity in your friendships, it makes you and your friendships stronger. So identify what your core values are, and then begin to find and surround yourself with people that you can pour into and who pour into you. And this is the way you can search out diversity, but still have core values that are the same. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of talent, you can go over to inspiredstewardship.com/talent and sign up for our 5-week series on the stewardship of talent. Or if you're in the U.S., you can text 44222 talent tips. That's talent tips to 44222 and get those tips. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.